It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Great to be with you on this Wednesday, in which we will be joined by EJ Hradek, lead analyst over at NHL Network on NHL Tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern weeknights. Get some thoughts with him on this Stanley Cup playoff postseason. A lot to talk about in baseball. An update on the Shohei Ohtani Ippei Mizuhara story, which is really becoming more of an Ippei Mizuhara story, and involving a lot of different things, shady areas of the sports betting world. So we'll get into that coming up in a bit. A brawl in baseball, a real baseball fight. Not these ones where they dance around and guys get some exercise running out of the bullpen. We'll talk about that as well. But we start things out in the NBA. My man Sam Yarnell is hanging out with us as well for a good part of the show today. We're getting our money's worth out of him today. Sam, let's talk about the Knicks. Oh, my God. Could not close the deal last night at home against the Philadelphia 76ers. The Knicks forgot that basketball games are 48 minutes, not 47, because they played great for 47. Looked like they had closed the deal up 6. Under a minute to play at Madison Square Garden. Everybody celebrating. John Starks is dancing. Patrick Ewing's there. All the former Knicks are in the house. Bill Bradley even stood up. It was amazing. And then
I think it was very Knicks.
Then Tyrese Maxey happened. And all I could think of was Reggie Miller 30 years ago. That's all I could think of was Reggie Miller 30 years ago, the throat slash, taunting Spike Lee. I'm sure Spike Lee had to have seen it in his, that image had to have crept into his mind as the Knicks just find a way to lose a game that they should have won, and they should have wrapped up this series last night. Just awful. Absolutely awful. I'm telling you, I still think they're going to win the series. I'm not going off the deep end here, but that was tough to watch last night.
Game 6, definitely a must-win for the Knicks, because if this thing goes 7, you might as well give it to Philadelphia.
No,
right now.
Not at the Garden.
Tyrese Maxey is establishing himself as a superstar in the league.
Yeah.
It was incredible on a team where we have talked for years about Joel Embiid and let's mix all these different superstars around Joel Embiid and let's see what we have to put around Joel Embiid for the Sixers to be successful. I don't think anyone ever realized, just give the ball to Tyrese Maxey. My God, the guy scored 7 points in 25 seconds by himself to force overtime. Incredible. He finished, 46-9. You're kidding me. Tyrese Maxey has clearly established himself as a top 5 point guard in the NBA. And I don't think he's 5. Absolutely impressive this whole postseason from Maxey. But last night was the cherry on top, and he almost seemingly single-handedly. Don't get me wrong. In overtime, Joel played some really good defense, and that was huge for the Sixers.
Yeah, he did.
Maxey offensively had the whole team on his back and carried them to that victory, Jason.
I was texting with our buddy Kurt Heelan last night towards the end of the game, and he said most unimpressive triple-double he's ever seen was Joel Embiid last night. Really, I mean, he is laboring to get up and down the floor, and trying to get your legs and trying to get in shape during the postseason, not ideal. It's not something you generally want to try to do. But hey, I mean, credit to the Sixers. They could have easily rolled over down, 6, 7, whatever it was late in that game. They could have easily rolled over. And decided to pack it in and get their plans ready for Cancun. But man, that's a bad loss for the Knicks. I still think, I agree. I still think the Knicks wind up winning the series. I wouldn't be surprised if they figured out a way to kind of wrap this thing up in Philadelphia. And if it goes 7, it goes 7. I picked the Knicks in 5, and that would have been correct if they didn't blow a late lead last night. Go ahead.
Let me ask you something really quick, because as a Knicks fan, I've been kind of asking you this since like the last week of the regular season and throughout the postseason, but it's finally coming to fruition when we talked about the Knicks really getting in trouble if they play overtime games or go into a long series early with Tibbs' coaching style, how that may affect their run in this playoffs and their fatigue.
I don't see
Does
that
make
yet.
you at all nervous?
I don't see it yet. It's not to say I won't, because again, they do play a pretty small rotation. But rotations in the NBA playoffs shrink for just about every team. I don't see it yet. I don't see fatigue as a factor yet. He made sure in that fourth quarter last night, Tibbs did, to get a good 4-minute span of that fourth quarter. He made sure to rest Jalen Brunson to have him fresh for the stretch run. And then, I mean, he threw the ball away in OT. It was a terrible turnover. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, Jalen Brunson played a fantastic game. Knicks are going to be fine. Knicks are going to win this year. I'm not panicking yet. If we're talking about Game 7 this weekend, or what, I don't know if it'd be Sunday or Monday, then we could have that conversation. The series nobody's talking about because nobody gets to see it. Magic and Cavaliers over on NBA TV, the forgotten series of these NBA playoffs, which is a real shame because it's been a really entertaining series. They're going back to Orlando for Game 6 after the Cavaliers figured out a way last night to get a win at home over Paulo Banchero and company. But a win for the Cavaliers. So that series goes back to Orlando. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we're talking about a 7-game series there. But I still feel like in a 7-game series, home court for Game 7, the young Magic still kind of finding their way. Not that one type of, I think they're one player away from being really good. And I don't know if they're going to be able to lure that player in the offseason, but credit to the Cavaliers, did what they had to do last night. Darius Garland was big.
This was a weird game to me, and it actually raised a lot more concern for the Magic in my mind than it did confidence in the Cavaliers that they'll get this thing done. You get 39 points out of Paulo Banchero, and you can't get enough around that to get the win. But hey, at least the game went over.
Yeah. Speaking of over, we thought the Bucks would be done. And I'll say this. I crush Doc Rivers when I think he deserves it. I give that team, and led by him, all the credit in the world. Because, again, without Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, they find a way to win that game last night and get this thing to a Game 6. Can we get one of those guys back for Game 6 with a chance to get this to 7? I don't know.
Tyrese Halliburton's inconsistency is the only thing that hurt the Pacers all year. It's the thing that's going to take them out of the playoffs.
Well, it won't take them out in this series. And I'll tell you what, they're a tough matchup for the Knicks, too, in the next round if the Knicks get through the Sixers. We'll talk Shohei Ohtani and Ippei Mizuhara next.
Over 13 million Americans were affected by identity theft in 2022, and the threats go way beyond just credit card fraud. Today's identity thieves can use your information in ways that are easy to miss by just monitoring accounts and credit, like opening loans, transferring home titles, even committing crimes.
Someone got my social security number, made a driver's license, and it was used for criminal activity.
You can do so much with a social security number that I didn't know could happen. They drained my bank account. It was terrifying.
You're even more vulnerable than you realize. Your information is exposed through online shopping, banking, even corporate data breaches. No wonder there's a new victim of identity theft every 3 seconds. Only LifeLock alerts you to the widest volume of threats all in one place, like someone trying to use your social security number, open a new loan in your name, or even commit a crime in your name.
There was a big yes button and there was a big no button. I clicked, "That's not me," and LifeLock took it from there.
If you become a victim of identity theft, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will be assigned to your case and work to fix the issue on your behalf.
If something happens, you have somebody fighting for you.
All LifeLock members are backed by the LifeLock $1 Million Protection Package, including reimbursement for stolen funds, personal expenses, and coverage for lawyers and experts up to $1 million. It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity. With LifeLock, it's easy to help protect yourself.
I will be with LifeLock forever.
Join the millions of people already protected by LifeLock. And for a limited time, save 25% on your first year with promo code 25TV. All plans include a 60-day money-back guarantee.
Call 800-710-7531.
Or visit lifelock.com/25TV to save 25% on your first year of identity theft protection. Enroll now.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of Sports Wrap. EJ Hradek coming up in about 10 minutes. NHL Network lead analyst on NHL Tonight. Get some thoughts with him on this Stanley Cup Playoffs. A couple segments with him. But we continue with the latest in the saga of Ippei Mizuhara, who basically stole, $16 million from his former friend, Shohei Ohtani. Before I get into this story, the latest twist in this story, I have to wonder, assuming everything is above board with Ohtani, which is, at this point we have no reason to question that anymore given the information that we have. But I have to ask, if you're Ohtani and you've just gone through this, how do you ever trust any human again? How do you ever trust anybody that they're not out to get you? There's got to be, and I know he shows this facade of, sort of easygoing and enjoys baseball and all smiles in the dugout, and all of that stuff is great. But you have to wonder, how do you ever trust again? From a not to sound like some armchair therapist here, but I don't know how you'd ever believe or trust anybody after you go through an experience like this if you're Shohei Ohtani.
I think that, Jason, and this is an interesting dynamic because it's something that we've talked about a couple of times now on the show. And I remember specifically when this whole thing started, I went on kind of a soliloquy about how we have in baseball this severe lack of completely English fluent players, more so than we do in basically any other sport. I mean, maybe soccer, but even in soccer, you think about the places where it's the most prevalent, you can generally get away with speaking a non-native language to that direct area. Such is not the case in Major League Baseball. And I think that this is something that, again, we're going to continue to see year over year, not necessarily just with Japanese players, but obviously as there's a stronger and stronger influx of these players coming over from Nippon Professional Baseball to play in Major League Baseball, we're going to see it more. But let's not forget about all of the hundreds of players coming up from South America who also don't know how to speak English at a fluent or native level. It's scary. It's terrifying. I don't even have to face any of this. I'm never going to have as much money as those guys, and I'm scared for them. It's crazy. I just don't know how you go about solving it. I don't know if Major League Baseball has to implement some sort of pipeline program where they're taking maybe language majors from a college and funneling them into Major League Baseball translator jobs. It's a very interesting dynamic.
You are starting to see, and it's kind of cool, and it's funny you mentioned this. Jen Mueller, our friend over at Root Sports, where you can watch us on the weekends in Seattle, she had a post-game interview last night with their closer there, Andres Munoz, and she made a special note in her post to say, hey, how cool is it Munoz is doing this interview in English? It was the first time he did an interview in English, a post-game interview on the field in English, stepping outside his comfort zone doing that. And she made it a point to say, hey, this is great. Got to support these guys. And there does need to be that support. And it's something I've talked about for years in other sports. And it's kind of a touchy subject because it gets into this idea of, well, you're forcing people to learn. No, I mean, and in this case, I think it's something that's really important for these guys because you can be taken advantage of, sort of the way Ohtani was. All right, real quick, so we only got 4 minutes left in the segment. This story is nuts. You've got now reports that money was being funneled. The money that Ippei Mizuhara was stealing from Ohtani was being funneled through casinos to set up markers, basically giving markers, to the bookies that he was paying this money off to. And then they were using it to gamble in casinos and cashing out the winnings, taking out the winnings in cash. This story is bonkers because now it involves casinos who are not doing their due diligence and not doing the things they're supposed to do. Resorts World Las Vegas is one that's being mentioned as basically funneling this money through, and they weren't supposed to be.
Resorts World Las Vegas is at the center, as far as we can tell. I should say this is a sealed indictment. No one has concrete information on just about anything at this point.
Yeah.
But all indications have pointed to, from at least what I've seen and heard, Resorts World is very much at the center of this federal investigation. And all of this kind of stems from that, and the illegal bookmaker Boyer is the last name. The first name I'm forgetting. I want to say Matthew Boyer.
Yeah.
So essentially this Boyer guy would go into these casinos that Mizuhara had already wired the money to make the bets for Ippei. And as I can tell it, that's how they were stealing the money from Shohei Ohtani. This, again, as every turn in this story does to me personally, raises 3 more questions than the one it answers. At the end of the day, if you are making $500,000 incremental payments to a casino 2 states away from you, I do not see how, 1, you can't notice the funds go down that much. 2, you can impersonate somebody, this being Ippei impersonating Shohei, to a point where you can cross state lines with a wire transfer into a protected money house that is a casino. And 3, again, really, the story just doesn't make sense. And it makes a lot more sense, and it seems a lot more plausible that they had Ippei known to be the known fall guy, if anything ever came of this, and there was some coagulation between the two in terms of placing these bets and funneling this money. That's just how it speaks to me. I don't really think that it's plausible.
You're really cynical. You are really cynical.
It's just, as someone who has seen the kind of, no, I haven't seen, I've heard the other side of how this entire operation at the casino works. There are so many safeguards against this exact kind of thing happening, because in decades ago, it would happen when we didn't have the technology and securities we do now. I just don't believe that they got around technology the way that they did.
By the way, Pachenga Casino in Southern California is also implicated in this report that came out. So another one to keep in mind. But Resorts World in Nevada, that's the one that definitely raises eyebrows, because like you said, it does take the story across state lines. All right, EJ Hradek joins us on the other side. Sam will rejoin us for something to consider in odds and ends. Sports Wrap continues on this Wednesday. Sports Wrap continues. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of the show. If you watch NHL Network, you're undoubtedly familiar with this face. Boom, there he is. The great EJ Hradek hangs out with us on the program. Catch him 6 p.m. Eastern weeknights over on NHL Network. I used to talk to him way back in the day when both of us were like relative nobodies in this industry, and we called him affectionately then the Prince of Pucks, a name dubbed by my old friend James Coletianos. And EJ, glad to have you on the show. So Give me some thoughts. I mean, let me start. I'll start right off the bat with the Rangers. Obviously, President's Trophy. They go out and do what they're supposed to do in sweeping the Capitals, a team that barely got into the postseason, sort of handling their business the way you would expect a team that is a Stanley Cup contender to handle their business.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that. It wasn't always very pretty. I mean, the Washington Capitals kind of, they were going to do their part to make it hard. It's a tight league, even a wide disparity of points in a 7-game series. I mean, you're going to have close games, and the Rangers found ways to win those games. It doesn't have to look pretty, but I think the biggest thing is they got through those games. They won all 4. They didn't have to go to a 5th or 6th or 7th game. They didn't have to risk more injuries or getting guys dinged up. And I think over the course of a 2-month NHL Stanley Cup playoff run, I mean, those are things that are going to help you, because we've seen Ranger teams in the past, the old John Tortorella Ranger teams, Jason, they had to play 7 games in every series, it seemed like, and they were always out of gas. And teams that ended up winning the Stanley Cup, you saw Vegas last year, they were never pushed to 7 games in any of the series. And, they had some short series along the way. They had a 5-game series to start against the Winnipeg Jets. So it's good for the Rangers to take care of business, and they can sit now and get ready to play Carolina, which is coming up probably starting over the weekend, I would guess.
Well, speaking of Carolina, obviously they handle the Islanders, take care of them in 5. Sort of preview this matchup based on what we saw during the regular season versus what you expect here between these two teams in the playoffs.
Well, it's absolutely what we expected in this division. I mean, when you're in a bracket format, there's no reseeding, so you knew that these two teams were on a collision course. I expect it to be a really good series. I don't think either one of the teams really, like I said, I don't think either one of the teams impressed me in the first round with the way they played. I mean, Carolina, I thought they had some moments, just like the Rangers had some moments in this series. The Rangers have really lived and died a lot of the season with their special teams. Their power play has been excellent. Their penalty killing has been very, very good as well. So you get into penalties in this series. Carolina has a good penalty kill, but it struggled against the Islanders. Will they be successful against the Rangers? Will they make sure to take fewer penalties against the Rangers, try to play more 5-on-5 hockey? That'll be the challenge. Freddie Anderson has played very well in goal for Carolina. I'd probably give Shesterkin still the edge in that matchup. I think Peter Laviolette gets the coaching edge over Roddy Brind'Amour, although Roddy's done a great job with that team. Outside of that, Jason, I think it's going to be a pretty tight series. I think this is Carolina. To me, it's their best roster that they've put forward in the playoffs during this whole run when they've been a successful team. I give the Rangers probably a slight edge, but I would expect it to be a really close, hard-fought series all the way through, really up-tempo hockey.
Rangers win?
I think the Rangers win, but I don't think it'll be an easy series. They played a couple years ago. They went 7. The Rangers went down to Carolina and won a game 7 after the teams exchanged home victories in the first 6. The Rangers have the home ice advantage in this circumstance. I just think the Rangers will find a way. I think they're just a little bit better than Carolina.
Are you surprised at the ease, relatively speaking, with which the Panthers were able to sort of dispatch the Lightning?
Well, they got through it in 5 games, right? So that's where you talk about the ease. You didn't have to go to a game 6. You didn't have to go to a game 7. The games themselves,
I thought it'd be a longer series.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people probably did think that. A lot of people thought Tampa had played hot down the stretch, and Florida kind of struggled over the last couple of weeks of the season. I mean, I'm of the mind that the Florida Panthers are the best team in the Eastern Conference. In March, I started to have second thoughts because they seem to struggle, but they've kind of found their way again. They can play a lot of different ways to beat you. They got great goaltending, experienced coach there, really deep roster on both at forward and on defense. They got a world-class goaltender who's nominated for the Vezina Trophy. He's already won it twice, had a great run last year. I think the Florida Panthers are going to be a hard out for anybody. And, you're right. I mean, it was a little surprising that it only took them 5 games, but that's a tribute, I guess, to that group and their ability to find ways to win games when they're tight. They won another overtime game as a franchise. They've won 11 straight overtime games, and that goes into a bunch of them that were played last year. Remember the first round against the Bruins last year? They won Game 5 in overtime to extend the series, won that series in Game 7. So The Florida Panthers, to me, they're rolling right now. They're waiting for the Bruins or the Leafs, and I think they'll beat either of those teams. Although I will say if they play the Bruins, I do expect that to be a pretty physical series.
Finish up the East with that Bruins Leaf series. And obviously they're not the one seed like they were last year with that historic run through the regular season. But you got a feeling Bruins fans are still feeling a little PTSD here with this thing going to 6.
Yes, I agree. And I'll tell you what, I can't for the life of me figure out why Jim Montgomery made some marginal roster changes for Game 5. Game 4, they were near perfect on the road. They played a terrific game, and yet he made some minor changes. He took Shattenkirk out, put Grzelcyk in. He took out Beecher, who's a really good faceoff man. Not coincidentally, in Game 5, they got beat up in the faceoff circle. So, for me, coaches don't usually change winning lineups. I mean, if you have a great player coming back in the lineup, you make an exception. I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs just won without Austin Matthews. If he can play in Game 6, he will be back in the lineup despite the fact that they just won. But marginal changes are odd. It didn't play out. I thought both guys that moved into the lineup, Grzelcyk got kind of beat down the wall by Tavares on the overtime game winner for Toronto. And as I said, they lost a lot of faceoffs last night without their best faceoff guy in the lineup. So we'll see how it goes in Game 6. I still like Boston, but you'd like to, if you're the Bruins, you had the Leafs in trouble. They were without their best player. You're on home ice. You had a chance to close it out. And then instead, worst possible scenario, you lose in overtime to remind everybody how you lost last year. So we'll see how it plays out. But that was not a good loss for the Bruins.
No, it certainly was not. We're going to hold over EJ to get into the West with him here coming up in just a couple of minutes, get some thoughts on everything going on in the Western Conference. Obviously, the defending Stanley Cup champion Golden Knights. We'll get into them as well. Don't go anywhere. We got a lot more to do. Glad to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of Sports Wrap. Lots more hockey on this Wednesday. EJ Hradek of NHL Network. We'll continue with him in just a moment.
Attention families with a loved one in a nursing home. If your loved one has suffered from bed sores, falls, broken bones, dehydration, or even death, you may be entitled to a substantial settlement. If you have a loved one who is injured in a nursing home, we will find out what happened. State violations are found against nursing homes every day. You have a limited time to file your claim, so don't wait. Call 800-398-5999 and speak with one of our attorneys. The call is confidential and free.
We proceed on this Wednesday edition of the show. Happy to be joined by my old friend EJ Hradek, NHL Network. Catch him weeknights 6 p.m. Eastern, talking all things pucks. Hanging out with us, talking about this NHL postseason. EJ, give me some thoughts on the Jets and Avalanche. There were some fireworks early in that series, but the Avalanche doing exactly, I think, what everybody would have expected them to do, and that was wrap this thing up.
Yeah, I think they just overpowered the Jets, quite frankly. I mean, they have when you have Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar as that 1-2 punch. I mean, these guys are such great skaters. They're dynamic. They're explosive. And then you add to the mix, Mikko Rantanen and Devin Taves on defense, Rantanen up front. Nichushkin is back healthy up front. He's a beast in the playoffs. They've had all kinds of, I guess, help from the other parts of their team. But McKinnon is just like a wild Mustang going through the neutral zone and coming up the ice. And Makar is just, he's one of the great defensemen already at this young stage of his career. One of the great defensemen in the history of the game. And, they were able to fix their defensive and goaltending woes that they suffered in Game 1. They gave up 7 goals and lost 7-6 in Game 1. Their goaltender, Alexander Georgiev, had really struggled down the stretch. He struggled in that game. They likely would have turned to their backup goalie, an inexperienced guy named Justus Anunen, but he was sick. So they stayed with Georgiev. He righted the ship. He played well enough down the stretch, and they rolled through the Jets in 5 games. I just think they just were playing well, and they've just got too much horsepower within that group. So they move on, and the Jets, try to pick up the pieces.
Well, just a quick note on the Jets, because there was this moment during the season with this team where people were like, fan enthusiasm, attendance. You had the owner making a plea to the fans, hey, come out and watch this team. They fought so hard to get that franchise back. Does this trip to the postseason, despite the way it ended, sort of reinvigorate that fan base a bit?
Well, I mean, they've had a team like they were in the playoffs last year. It was actually the same script. They went to the first round. They played. Now, their team last year struggled in the second half of the season, and there was some internal issues within the group that they addressed in the offseason. But they won their first game against the Vegas Golden Knights, who ended up winning the Cup last year. In fact, they were the only team to have a series lead over Vegas, as it turned out, in the playoff run last year. But they won game one. Ended up losing the next couple of games. Had injury issues in that series. Ended up losing in 5 as well. It's going to be interesting there. I mean, it's it is a smaller market. We know the costs of different things now. I mean, to play in the major leagues and any of these sports, it's expensive to go to games. And I think we probably saw a little of that in Winnipeg this year. But they've had a pretty good product. They had a really good team this year. Just unfortunate. They're in the Central Division. They ran into a really good team in Colorado in the first round. I mean, if they were in the Pacific, or if they were in one of the other divisions in the Eastern Conference, they could go on a longer run. But right off the hop, you get Colorado. So we'll see where it goes for the Jets. I do think, they've got to decide what they're going to do moving forward with Rick Bowness. He's been their head coach last couple of years. There was some kind of discussion within their group about should they have made changes during that playoff series against Colorado. So I think they'll probably look at that in the NHL. The coaches, they come and go pretty quick. So we'll see what they decide to do there. But it's still a good team in Winnipeg. I just think, again, they ran into a buzzsaw.
Vancouver and Nashville, Rick Tocchet's taken some heat because he didn't use a challenge, the tying goal. Eventually, Predators get a 2-1 Game 5 win in Vancouver on Tuesday night. What did you make of his decision to not go with the challenge there?
Well, it's a tough call because if you fail on the challenge, you get assessed a penalty for a failed challenge, and you're giving the Nashville Predators a power play in a tie game, in the final minutes of the game. So that was his thinking. He was thinking it was too close to challenge. His penalty killers have been pretty good. It was one of those ones that might have gone either way. It was, I think, one of the more interesting ones that would have been challenged. So it might have been worth the shot there, because if you win the challenge, obviously the goal comes off the board and you're still leading 1-0 with about 10, 12 minutes to play in the game. But if you lose the challenge, and I guess this was his thinking, we lose the challenge, it's a tie game, and now we put them on the power play. So he didn't want to take that risk, not being as clear or as certain that he was going to be successful with that challenge. So, I mean, I get it, but I think you could make the case, because their penalty killers have been so good and the playoff series has been tight, that maybe that would have been the time to do it. That being said, the goal in question was scored on the power play, so that might have factored into his thinking as well.
Vegas and Dallas, no surprise. It's going to be tough to put away the defending champs. And it feels like to me this has been the most entertaining series of this postseason.
It's certainly right there. I mean, I think it's unfortunate. Sometimes it works out that way. Vegas had injury issues this year. They struggled at different points of the season. They ended up in the last day of the season, it flipped. Dallas could have played Los Angeles in the first round, and Vegas could have played Edmonton. But through some things that went on in that final day with Chicago and Los Angeles in a game they played together, kind of a crazy game, it ended up where the number 1 seed Dallas Stars took on the Vegas Golden Knights, who were really the second wild card. And it's been a really good series. Vegas went in, won the first 2 games in Dallas. I don't think they played particularly well, but they got the job done. And I'm thinking, well, I love Vegas' team when they're healthy. They get Mark Stone back. They get Pietrangelo back. They're going to be just fine. And then Dallas goes into Vegas, and I really took their game up a notch. They completely dominated the first half of game number 3. If it wasn't for Logan Thompson, Dallas probably wins that game 6, 7, 8. You pick a number to 1 or 2. Thompson keeps them in. They tie. They go to overtime. Dallas finds a way in overtime. Dallas wins a tight one in game 4. So now we're down to a 2 out of 3. Dallas has home ice back again. Doesn't much matter. The road team has won all 4 games. It's going to be really interesting, because I really do like Vegas' team a lot when they're healthy, but I have to say the Dallas Stars have been really impressive in this series. And if you've asked me who has had the better of the play, I would say Dallas has probably had the better of the play through 4 games. We'll see in a critical obviously Game 5 in Dallas tonight.
EJ Hradek, 6 p.m. Eastern, NHL Tonight. Always appreciate it, my friend.
Good to see you.
Do you use Viagra or Cialis? Have you been thinking about trying Viagra or Cialis? What if we can promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? If you're paying $20 or more a pill for Viagra, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Our pill delivers the exact same results for less than $3. We'll do the math for you. You'll save more than $16 a pill for the same results. Want more? We'll give you 40 blue pills or 40 yellow pills for $99 and add 4 more pills free. You save more than $500. Stop overpaying for expensive prescriptions. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what to do next. You need to call now and get your 44 pills for just $99. Stop overpaying for Viagra. Call us anytime, day or night, and start saving big money for the exact same results. Have your credit card ready. Ordering is fast and easy, with your pills delivered to your door in a non-marked package. Call now.
Odds and ends coming up in about 10 minutes on the program. First, something to consider, Sam Yarnell. Oh, hi, there you are. Mike Trout. Man, I saw this story last night. I'm not even like a Mike Trout guy. I mean, he's got all the talent in the world, and a special, generational player and all of that stuff, and all the MVPs and all that's great. I'm not a Trout guy. I'm a baseball guy. I'm a story guy, given what I have done for a living for all these years. But there is no more tragic a baseball story to me than the unrealized potential of a Mike Trout, simply because the guy just can't stay healthy. And I know we bang on this drum. There are just certain guys that are of this ilk. Zion Williamson's already starting to sort of take that sort of feel to it with his career. Grant Hill was a guy, could not ever get healthy, couldn't get right. Still a Hall of Fame talent, but what he could have been is always what you talk about. I'll even go one step, what some people might say is one step too far, because he's an all-time great. Shaq. I always say unrealized potential with Shaq because of health and conditioning and things like that. But to bring it back here, Trout was off to a good start. Batting average wasn't so hot, but he was hitting for power. He was running. He had he was stealing bases. And now you find out he's got a torn meniscus. Yeah, he's going to be back this year at some point, but what the hell do the Angels even look like at that point by the time he gets back? And it's just a reminder of the fragility that we see in professional sports and of athletes and guys that, you got to enjoy them when they're out there, because in some cases you just never know when they're not going to be there. And you almost have to wonder if at some point, if we're getting to a point with Trout where he just says, what am I going to keep doing this for? Rehabbing to come back and get hurt again. Talk about a hamster wheel of pain. And I don't even mean just the physical pain, because a torn meniscus, relatively speaking, and I've had one, not a big deal. But to go through this over and over and over again, at some point you have to wonder if he gets to the end of a season and he just says, you know what? I'm 36 years old. I'm done.
Jason, the story of Mike Trout is a tragic one.
It is
at this point.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'm sitting here in awe, because full disclosure, I just pulled up Mike Trout's career numbers, and I guess I had never really taken into account how talented the man actually is. Obviously, I've watched him basically more than my entire baseball life. Every time that Mike Trout has played 130 games in a season, he is literally automatic to finish top 2 in MVP voting or win Rookie of the Year. It is across the board. If he plays more than 130 games in a season, either one of those things happens. He either wins the MVP, finishes second, or wins Rookie of the Year. Mike Trout's 162 game averages. That's to say if he played every game of the season for a full season. 40 homers, 102 runs driven in, 23 stolen bases, 105 walks, 158 strikeouts, batting average of 300, OPS of 991, OPS plus of 173. Mike Trout has been robbed by his body of being maybe the greatest baseball player of all time. Actually, if Shohei Ohtani didn't exist. Mike Trout has played 150 or more games in a season 4 times in his career. He is on season 14 in Major League Baseball. We can take out one of those, the COVID year they played 60 games. He played 53 of them. Mike Trout legitimately has been maybe more robbed by injuries than any player in the major leagues right now, Jason. Can you think of somebody who has had more promise and put up better numbers when healthy, only to have, the better part of 7-8 seasons taken from him by injury?
I can't. As you asked me that, I wasn't prepared for you to ask me that, but like
Grady Sizemore comes to mind.
Yeah, but I mean,
but
not
Grady
even on the same
Sizemore
level.
was not as good as Mike Trout.
Not even remotely on the same level. No, I mean, I will say, a guy that got hurt a lot, and he's not in the prime of his career anymore. Giancarlo Stanton.
Totally, I think that's a great pull.
That's the close one. That's about the closest thing. But even that, it doesn't even come close to me.
Yeah.
Now, you're early in his career. He's still very early in his career. Yordan Alvarez has been robbed of some time. If he's one of those guys that if he could stay on the field, and you look at him statistically, I mean, he's a beast. Yeah, that's about all I could come up with. It's about all I could come up with.
From position players, especially, maybe if we mix in pitchers, you start talking about the Steven Strasburgs who gets thoracic outlet syndrome coming off a World Series
pitcher.
MVP.
Yeah.
You don't get much more unlucky than that. But Mike Trout legitimately, and this season was the favorite to win AL Comeback Player of the Year, was the 6th favorite, I believe, odds-wise, to win AL MVP. This guy had found new life at the age of 32 for an already Hall of Fame player. That is nearly impossible to do. And Mike Trout did it easily. It was incredible to watch. It's even more unfortunate because now we've almost been guaranteed Mike Trout never winning a playoff series in his career. I mean, you don't see him getting traded after this.
As he goes, the Angels have gone. I mean, it's just been the story, really. As he goes, the Angels have gone. It's not coincidence that they parallel each other. It's not a coincidence. If you talk about the value of one player to a franchise and what his absence has meant just as much as when he's been on the field. We're going to do odds and ends in just a couple of minutes. A brawl in baseball, and it was actually a good one. We'll get to it next. All right, before we wrap things up for this Wednesday, a reminder, go and check out the vodcast version of Sports Wrap, available wherever you get your podcasts. Just look for Sports Wrap with Jason Page. Maybe you only get the weekend show. Maybe you only get the daily show, depending on where you're watching. This way, you just have it all the time. Without any further delay, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. The end of civility in baseball. No, that's overstating it a bit. One brawl certainly doesn't do that. Watch Jose Siri and Ander Uribe slug it out. Watch this. Look out, Uribe throwing haymakers. Look out. Oh, my goodness. Most baseball brawls, maybe one a year actually has punches thrown. Because usually what happens is these guys dance around, and then they get tough when 17 people get in between them. But this was an actual brawl last night between Uribe and Jose Siri. So, I don't know. What do you ask? What do you ask? Ask Siri. Hey Siri. Maybe you do a Hey Siri or something like that. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Dude, I'm the young one on the show.
You are. You are.
Hey Siri, did I just get knocked out? The person who took the most beating in this brawl, and Jason, oh wait, hold on, my Siri's freaking out. Jason, you'll be able to put it back on the screen and everyone will see. Rhys Hoskins is the one who took the worst beating in this brawl, and he was trying to play peacemaker after Uribe and Siri got at each other's throats. It was crazy. I don't know what happened, whether Hoskins, it looked like Uribe swung and missed and came over the top and got Rhys, knocked him to the ground, and he was in between the two. It was a wild development. I was actually watching live when this happened,
oh, really?
And I was so confused.
So what happened? What caused it? What precipitated it?
That's the thing. That's what I was just getting ready to say. I was so confused by the whole lead up to it. It was a hard fought at bat, but a weak ground ball. Uribe to Hoskins away from first. Uribe covers the base, and he beats Siri by like 5 steps to the bag, and then Siri runs up on him and starts talking in his face, and they start jawing at each other. All of a sudden, they're swinging. Rhys Hoskins hits the deck, and then the bullpen's empty.
Not to make this about the Yankees, but I'm going to for a moment.
Oh, my God.
No, because did you not see what happened last night? Juan Soto hit a home run. Yankees are down 4-1. There's gonna be fireworks. I'm predicting it. There's going to be fireworks between the Yankees and Orioles tonight, because last night you had Juan Soto hit a home run off of was it Burns that pitched for them last night?
Gosh, no,
no, it's Dean Kramer. It was Kramer,
right? Yeah.
So he hits a home run off Kramer last night and does the old fashioned stare down. I mean, he might as well have looked at him and thrown him the middle finger, and runs around the bases. And the Yankees are down 4-1 at that point. It makes it 4-2. And I'm honestly, even as a Yankee fan, I'm like, that kind of stuff is going to get you in trouble. And not only is it going to get you in trouble, it's going to get one of your other guys plunked. And then you wind up with the potential for injuries. That's the line for me when it comes to a guy like Soto. Is if you want to dance around and you want to hot dog and do things like that, that's fine. But when it potentially puts other players at risk, then it becomes a problem for me. Watch the Orioles and Yankees tonight for that reason.
Really quick, Dean Kramer, don't leave the ball over the middle of the plate, and then no one will have time to watch the ball fly for 495 feet and walk around the bases 2 miles an hour. Continue.
Bees. We had this happen out here in Palm Springs at the tennis, the BNP Paribas this year, where a match got delayed because bees just decided to swarm the camera that hovers over the court. Well, this happened last night with the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers in Arizona, and the game was delayed, for about an hour? And they had to call in a beekeeper. He vacuumed up the bees. He got to throw out the first pitch. He became a huge celebrity. Go.
It was actually into my world again, because I was watching this game too. I was hanging out with the boys last night, and one of them had a parlay that was riding on this game. All of the other legs had cashed, and it was riding on this game. And he was getting himself hyped up for the game. We had it turned on or whatever, and it hadn't started at 9:40 Eastern when it was listed to start. And right then I get a notification on my phone, hey, there's a delay in Arizona because there are bees swarming the backstop. It was absolutely hilarious. You're exactly right, Jason. It took him an hour to get a beekeeper in there, which was the weird part to me. If you're the Arizona Diamondbacks or any other Major League Baseball team who runs a facility that is partially outdoors, how do you not have someone on call to deal with that outdoor facility at all times? You'd think they had a beekeeper on reserve ready to go.
You would think.
I guess not.
The Brewers, the Bees, and the Broncos. Denver is not going to give the fifth-year option or take up the fifth-year option on Zach Wilson, the former Jets QB, now a Broncos QB. Can I just say this? And this always winds up happening with these guys that leave the Jets and get exiled for whatever reason. They struggle, whatever it might be. I'm rooting for Zach Wilson, because anybody who has to go through what he did with the Jets and playing for that team and the indecision with that franchise and the way they handled him, I don't know if he's going to wind up being a decent quarterback. There's been a lot of guys that have gone through this. Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. I hope Zach Wilson comes through the other end of this and has an NFL career of some kind.
One thing he will unquestionably be able to do, Jason, is help Bo Nix when we find out Bo Nix is also terrible.
Nick Ferguson's not going to like you for that. It's going to wrap it up for us. Thanks to EJ Hradek. We'll see you back here on Thursday.